How to actually land an internship in management consulting, coming from someone who interned at two different consulting firms. So let's separate this down to before you get an interview and after you get an interview. So looking at before, there's four different factors that you need to consider. Three of them are just going to be simply on your resume. So the first one is your GPA. Your GPA is probably going to be very underratedly important. And you might say like, oh, Kevin, I know someone who landed an internship with a 3.2 GPA. Well, the thing is, they're most likely the exception to the rule. A lot of candidates, when they're applying, they usually have upwards of a 3.5 or even higher in terms of their GPA. Remember, you're not going to be the exception. If you want to maximize your chance, you need to aim for a high GPA, preferably above a 3.7. This might differ depending on if you're in business or if you're in like a STEM related field, as business classes are usually less intense than STEM, so the cutoff is a little bit, higher for business. But regardless, at the end of the day, still try to aim to be an A minus or an A student. The next thing is extracurriculars. Now, this could go in any single different way, but the most important thing is that you're demonstrating leadership and that you're able to create an impact within your community. It would be best if these extracurriculars are related to consulting, like for example, doing consulting related projects with like clients. But if you are able to demonstrate your leadership in a different way, it will also be beneficial to you. The last thing on your resume is pre-existing internships or professional experience. So think about, like I mentioned before, internships, research experience, personal projects that you've worked on, anything that shows that you have the skills required to succeed in management consulting. Management consulting is all very client facing, so you need to be a very good communicator. You need to be able to analyze data succinctly, and you need to be able to structure your thoughts. So any of those three categories, if you are able to demonstrate that you could look at data and break it down, or you're able to deliver impact on a specific project you're making, these things should be highlighted in your resume. With that out of the way, the fourth thing is networking. So networking is going to be extremely important and is almost like a bare minimum requirement to get a referral, to get a chance at interviewing at one of these top firms, right? From the company's perspective, if they have an employee that is recommending a certain candidate to interview, they're going to be way more likely to interview that person because there's already a pre-established rapport. If you don't have a referral, it's basically just going up to someone and just saying like, hey, hire me, and they know nothing about you, right? You may have a good resume and that might pass you on to the next round, but it's still going to be in your best interest to get a referral. And so you do this by networking. So early on, if you're a freshman or sophomore, start talking to alumni within your school, reach out to them, ask them questions about consulting, get their advice. And eventually, once you build up these relationships over time, you can get to a point where you could comfortably ask someone for a referral. And if they think you're going to be a good candidate for the company, then most likely they'll be giving you a referral. Now let's move on to after the interview stage. So during the interview stage, there's usually a behavioral and a case interview. So every single company is going to have a different structure. Like some companies only do behavioral, some companies only do case, some companies do a mix in between, right? The most important thing for the behavioral, just to sum it up, is to build rapport early. So don't skip the small talk. Another thing is just use the STAR method. So situation, task, action, result. And this requires a lot of practice. I think a lot of people focus way too much on the case and they don't focus on how well they can communicate their thoughts and how other people like kind of perceive them within the behavioral interview process. Next up is a case interview. The case interview is arguably more difficult just because there's a lot of moving parts. And if you've never done a case before, there's a lot to learn. The best resource that I know for starting to do your case interview prep is something called Crafting Cases. They basically have whole different modules that are free online that teach you the basics of how to make a framework, how to structure your ideas, how to go through brainstorming, how to do market sizing, all those different tasks. But the main takeaway for casing is that there are three different things that they're trying to test you. One is your business acumen. So how well do you understand how businesses actually work and how they operate? Two is your communication. So how well are you able to structure your ideas? Are you concise in terms of how you're talking? And are you able to portray your thoughts as easily as possible, right? Third one is just data analytics. So are you able to crunch numbers? Do you have almost like a number sense? And are you able to correctly get to the right answer and then justify that answer in the context of the problem? So those are the main different steps in terms of getting an internship. A lot of it at the end of the day may come down to luck just because there's a lot of other candidates that are within the same position. But if you want to maximize your chances, you should take a look at all the different steps that I provided and see the best way in terms of how you could actually improve on those. Hope this helps. Like and follow for more.